Hello and welcome to the Ratnest podcast, episode number 35 with Edward Davis.
Hey! How's it going, Edward? Thanks for being here with us.
How are you guys doing?
Doing really good.
That's
man.
our intro, man. You know,
Nice.
didn't mean to catch you off guard. Thank you so much for sitting down and talk with us, man. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day. So anyone listening that is unfamiliar with you and what you have going on, Edward Davis is a comic book maker who has a series of comics called Immortal Era. But before we get into all that, can we just talk about a little bit where you're from, how you got your, how you got into comics and at what age that affected you?
Okay, so I'm from Southern California in the Inland Empire. And comics, I think the first comic I got, I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. And we went to the swap meet, and it was just an old collected edition of Spider-Man books, starting with the Amazing Fantasy. And I think it was like the first 10 issues beyond that. And I was just so hooked. I read that thing till the pages were falling out and then taped them back in and read it again. So, I mean, that was kind of my first introduction to comics. And it was just one of those things. Someone was probably selling it for a quarter. And I was like, I have to have this. And that kind of started my lifelong love of comic books. And from that point, we went to the swap meet. I tried to seek out any of the other old Marvel collected editions. So I got all the whole early copies, Iron Man, all the early Avengers, and just remember reading those books, all of them until the spines were just falling in half, and just loving every minute of that. And as I got older, starting venturing into different comic books and really getting hooked on the series that came out from Vertigo, like Sandman and Preacher and Swamp Thing and stuff like that, and just kind of realizing that comic books can be so much more than just, the villain and hero of the month battling it out. You can tell deep intellectual stories that people will study for years, all in the form of a comic book.
Totally. I remember getting told when I was in elementary school that comic books were a lesser form of English literature. Like the teachers didn't, you couldn't do comic books for book reports or that kind of thing. But then I had a teacher in third grade that was like, no, comic books are just as deep as any novel. And it's just maybe more approachable because of the artwork and being able to associate with the visual stuff as a kid instead of, a 200-page novel where you have to just look at pages of text. But did you ever get told as a kid that comic books aren't where it's at, or were you kind of encouraged to keep reading that way?
I think it was definitely looked at okay, well, we made sure we bought you some real books. So, that it was kind of that stigma, okay, well, we see that you like to read and you're spending a lot of time in comic books, so we're going to make sure you read some novels as well. So it was definitely, I think it's, still frowned upon, even though you can look at, graphic novels that are telling amazing stories and they're winning awards, and people still look at it pictures, this is a lower art form. And I think a lot of people are over that stigma, but I don't think it's ever going to fully go away, because there's people that still, they think comic books and they don't even think beyond the Sunday funny pages. They think they're just reading the smallest form of literature, and they don't realize that, it's such a bigger form of storytelling. There's college classes that they dedicate to teaching graphic novels now. So, I mean, in the public sides, I don't think they'll ever be fully accepted, but I think they're definitely a lot more accepted now, especially with so many movies that have come out beyond just the Marvel Universe ones, but, deeper intellectual movies that have come out based on graphic novels. And people think, wow, if this came from a graphic novel, maybe I'm missing something.
Right.
It's such a fun medium to be able to tell a story too. When you're writing something, you're kind of leaving it up to the reader to create the imagery in their head. And in order to tell a deep story like that, you can guide it so much better with the visual aids that you're able to put into that story. And it's a fun way to experience a story too, especially one as deep and intricate as what you're doing. It's really cool. I
mean, I love it as a storytelling form. I think it really, I mean, I started writing this story as a novel, and writing it
Okay.
as a novel trilogy. And then just the thought, because my brain never could process the fact that if you're not an artist, you can still create comic books. Because for so long, I just assumed, oh, that whoever's doing that amazing art is also writing the story, but I can't draw a stick figure well. So this isn't the medium for me, until I realized, no, you just need to be able to describe and let someone else take your words and make the beautiful pictures. So once I realized that, I knew this was the way I wanted to tell this story.
Can we touch on that in the sense that a lot of the guys that we've talked to are individual, they're like doing story and just like mostly black and white illustrations, made some rough coloring and stuff themselves. But you have a few people that you work with. So where is it? You write the story and then you give it up to the artist to ink, and then you have a coloring person as well, and then a couple editors. How does that all like work together? How do you guys all find like the mesh?
Yeah, we're now working currently on our 6th issue. So the 5th one just got released. And I think in the beginning, it was a little bit bumpier because the team hadn't worked together. Fortunately, my artist and my colorist had worked together on a previous book. So they had a little bit of time to kind of gel and understand each other's styles. And the colorist had also worked on other professional books. She worked on the Doctor Who series. I think she was doing the she was the flatterist on that series. So it helped that she knew kind of how to format things correctly, because it was definitely a process of learning as we went along. You know, you can get your art team to do everything, but if you format it wrong, it's going to cut things off at the printer. So having her let it so we could actually print a book out that wasn't a complete embarrassment because we formatted it in the wrong way.
Sure.
And I think as we've been moving along, the team is working better together. The artist, since we've been working together for so long, he can say, I think this might be a little bit better if we tweak it this way. It'll help, you know, it'll be a more powerful panel if we go like this. Where in the beginning, he didn't want to upset me because he didn't know, am I going to be somebody who's like, no, these are my words and you're going to follow them? Or am I someone who's going to be more flexible? So now he knows I'm more flexible, and there's certain things I'll say, okay, this one is important because I'm thinking 10 issues ahead as well. So I need to say, okay, that's going to happen in issue 15. We need to have this exactly this way.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about that now, is that something that you felt the same way from issue 1? Were you always flexible, or did you start out like with it a little bit closer to you because it was new and you were working with these people for the first time? Like, was it kind of like a growing process to get that gel, or were you pretty easygoing in the beginning too?
I think I was a little more rigid in the beginning, but I always try to be flexible and respect the artist, because I don't have a background in art. So I don't know what makes good art. I have a background in reading thousands upon thousands of comic books. But he's been drawing, you know, since he was old enough to pick up a pencil. The same thing for me. I was writing stories from the moment I could actually write. Well, he's been doing the same thing with drawing. So I needed, even in the beginning, to respect him as an artist. So there was flexibility, and there were, you know, the only thing I think I was very rigid on was the character designs themselves, because I envisioned the characters in a certain way. So that was the only point we had a lot of back and forth. Whereas that doesn't quite work. I'm looking for something more along this line. And that was the one where we had to probably go through 7 or 8 designs before we finalized what we really thought was the right way.
Wow.
Did you model any of the characters after people, like whether they be celebrities or people you know? Because in my mind, there's a couple little things that stand out that remind me of comedians or like celebrities. But was there anything in mind when you came up with the character like look themselves?
I don't think so. I mean, it's funny because I sent just descriptions of the character, and one of the main characters everyone says looks just like my wife. So probably subconsciously I did that, but in he never got a picture of my wife to model it after. It was just based on my descriptions. Then everybody looks, they're like, oh, well, you put your wife on the cover. So that one, I guess my subconscious made her the main character. And the other ones, I wasn't really looking for anyone specific. Now I try to find actors like who could play this character if it ever got adapted into anything. And I found different actors that work, but I wasn't really working with that. I was more picky about how they would dress and things like that too, because some of the styles that he came up with just didn't work for what I was imagining. So
right.
I'm sure in the beginning he thought, oh man, this guy's going to be a hard ass because he's just stopping me in every step of the process. But I think once we got past the character designs, things started really moving a lot smoother and easier.
Awesome. So I noticed do you have a writing background that you say you come from writing? Is that what you, like where you got your start and decided to like write through this? Because the story is so in depth and the story is so, it flows like very well. And as you're saying, you were able to just give a description of the characters and he was able to create them based off of your description. Like that has to be some pretty impressive writing to be able to form a character this detailed, you know, off of the description that you have. So like, have you always been a writer? Did you go to school for that? Like, is that kind of what you were aspiring to do with your life and livelihood, or what is your day job and how does that like play into how it created the characters and all of that?
I have some writing background. It was always something I did for fun and never really took it serious enough to think that I could make a career out of it. I think it was more based on fear than anything. But I got a creative writing certificate when I was in college and, you know, kind of spent my time doing that with my electives. I have an English lit degree and right now I work as a teacher. So I think it kind of lends itself to that because when I'm teaching the kids how to write, I'm saying, okay, we're going to write descriptive writing. And when you do your basic descriptive writing, that kind of is how you write a comic book. You need to give so much detail into what each and every single panel is going to have. So, you know, it could be one simple panel out of 6, but you're going to spend half a page describing it so your artist knows what to do. And you don't want to get over describing because then, you know, people start thinking, oh, you're going to try to be like Alan Moore, who over describes every little thing in his scripts. You know, the doorknob will get 3 pages dedicated to
the stuff you don't need to include. It's overkill.
And that was my beginning, was just learning how to cut things, because I remember the first draft I had of this script, I sent it to an editor who had edited for DC and he just ripped it to shreds. He's like, all right, you're saying too much here, you're saying too little there. You know, my first issue was just basically all exposition and backstory, and I gave everything away all in one issue. So all these little surprises come out issue after issue. Basically in 22 pages, I gave it all away.
Right.
So he said backstory can't be your story, or there's nothing that's going to surprise your readers.
Right. You have to learn to incorporate some of that like nuance or, you know, just like a little bit of giving a hint before you drop the whole thing. And that it was hard to get just ripped to shreds, because here I thought I had created something that was really good, and you know, I shared it with different friends and everybody threw the high praise, and when you take that first punch in the face, like, oh shit, you know, I'm not all that, but that's okay. You kind of need that.
Reality check
back into reality.
I'm sure it made you a little bit stronger of not necessarily a writer or anything, but just a producer of a comic, because then you see how they look at it as opposed to how you look at it. And then when you're working with a team, you know how to kind of tell them how to look at it, because I'm looking at it this way, they're looking at it this way. You need to be all of this together. You know, it's crazy. And then you have an editor and an assistant editor, as well as someone that does the text and graphics, right? The captions and graphics. How does that all work? Because I don't know, like, how do those people fall into your group? Because I feel like that should be like your job. I mean, not to say that, but you know, I think
when it comes down to it, the editor, that my wife serves as the main editor on the book, and she kind of guides me along with the story. Because when you're telling a story that's as large as the one I'm trying to tell, you run into points where you know what's happening, but she's reading it as someone outside of the story, and she's saying this doesn't make sense, and this character wouldn't act this way.
I see that.
And I think that this is a misstep for this particular thing. So you can't have someone, even if it is, you know, a spouse who is your editor, they can't just coddle you and be like, you're the greatest, your writing is also perfect. It's like, no, this just doesn't work. And then my assistant editor, he's just an expert at grammar, punctuation, because one of the stigmas you get with indie comics is that they're just sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
That you're going to get a lot of misplaced commas, that you're going to have just a grammatical mess. And you want to elevate yourself to play with the big boys. It has to look like it belongs with them. Mm-hmm. So he comes in and he also helps with dialogue, where once we've completed the script and you start actually lettering it, he'll say, all right, this line would sound better if we tweaked it a little bit this way. So my wife serves as the editor for the story, and then he serves as more of the dialogue editor, and then just the one who cleans it up so that it can, you know, you can set it next to a Marvel book and people aren't going to see this huge discrepancy and think this one's garbage and this one is elite. So you want them to look at yours and think, you know what, I can't see the difference. That's, you know, and a few of the reviews I've got, that's the highest compliment I've received, is that I can't tell that it doesn't belong next to a Marvel or a DC book.
High praise,
man. I was going to say that we're just going to like lead into that point, because we deal with all these indie comic artists and stuff. And I mean, what you do on your own is amazing, but what you can do with a team, a small team, nonetheless,
it shows.
It shows. It looks very professional, very polished. You belong right there next to the big boys on the comic racks.
Absolutely.
I'm blown away by what I was shown, because I just was introduced to it this week when Jim sent me the comics. And I was like, wow, this guy's the real deal. I get it. I get what he's trying to do. I mean, it's very clear to me. I do have to ask though, you said you started writing it as a novel and then it kind of progressed into something different. I could almost tell that if you were just to look at issue 1 and issue 5, because there's so much less dialogue in 5 and it's a lot more action panels and like big pages. Was that something that was intentional, or is that just kind of how it developed?
I mean, with issue 1, I mean, it's very wordy, and it was so much more wordy in the first draft. I gave it to my letterer and he's like, dude, there's no art left. I covered everything. So I mean, what you're reading is the kind of cut and condensed version of what was ridiculously over wordy.
Okay.
And I think learning to write, because I knew everything was kind of going to build toward a big action last couple of issues. Like, all right, we're going to set up the world in the first 3, and then we're going to give the payoff. Because if you just drop into nothing but action, I don't think you can develop the story quite as well. So part of it was intentional, and part of it was kind of learning as I go and thinking, all right, it can't always be that wordy, because, you know, some people, they want those big splashier pages. So I figured I wanted to kind of create a good balance between those two. So 4, 5, and 6 get your kind of your big culminating action that's going to have the big payoff that still pushes the story forward. Because if you're doing action, your action needs to propel the story,
right?
Or else it's just mindless action. So then issue 7 will kind of mirror more like issue 1. It'll be a quieter, wordier issue where not a lot's going to happen, but we have to kind of see the aftermath of what happened in issue 6.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I really liked, is the continuity between all of them. You know, as it's, you can tell that it's one cohesive story throughout, and it doesn't skip around confusingly. And I guess that has a lot to do with you having that editing producer and your wife, like helping make sure that the story works, but it's done beautifully. The way that it flows all the way through.
And it doesn't focus on one character or the other throughout the issues. There is like more pages dedicated to kind of each character's part in like what's happening. And you just kind of learn along the way.
Yeah, no, it's a really well told story. And I guess that's what you get when you have a writer that creates a graphic novel rather than an artist who's creating the graphic
learn how to
novel,
write.
learning how to write. There's a big difference there. And most of the people we've interviewed are the latter there. They're the artists.
Myself included.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
you know, I would rather, I have other these dreams like, oh, I could make the story. I have these like movies in my head, but like I see them visually. You know, it's to tell the story, writing it out. It's going to take a little bit more effort. I'm going to definitely need more people to go over it with me and develop it than I would just kind of drawing my own idea of what I want.
Yeah. And see, I'm the opposite. I have that artist envy, and I'm like, I have this perfect panel in my head and I can describe it, but I wish I could just draw it, because it's like, oh, you haven't quite got what I was thinking. So you try to describe it perfect, but sometimes they miss the mark just that little bit. And that's where it's just like, if these hands could do anything halfway decent with a pencil, then we would be there and I could draw a little rough sketch and he'd be like, okay, I know exactly what you mean. So yeah, you know, you get that, you know, from the writer's point of view, we all wish we could do the artwork, and, you know, because that, you know, there's a lot of times like, oh, the artist, the sexy one, and the writer's like, oh, you're just the writer. I remember I got told by somebody, I was wearing my friend's shirt because he has a comic that he does called Lucha Cats, and I was wearing a Lucha Cat shirt, and someone was like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, yeah, my friend's the artist, and, you know, this and that. Like, oh, artist, or, you know, that's so cool. I'm like, I write a book. He goes, yeah, I got a lot of comic ideas too. Just the full blow off, like, wow. No love for the writer.
Man, yeah. The content creator.
No, that's so cold, dude. That's so cold. But I mean, I guess that's how it is. Like the art world is cold to other artists. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't matter like who you are. It's like everyone thinks their shit's the best, and, you know, they don't have room for anything else. It's like, I don't want to check that out, blah, blah. But how have you had like the reception of what you've been doing? Like, have you had a lot of like any pushback, or has it been pretty positive? I mean, how are you getting your stuff out there, and what outlets are you using?
It's been pretty positive, and I think it's been growing through time, because when I started, of course, you have these dreams like, okay, they're going to drop the books on my porch, and next thing you know, Netflix is going to be pounding on my door, and Hulu's going to be fighting for which one wants the contract. And instead you got, you know, 500 books sitting here and nobody knows about them.
Right.
Besides your family and friends. And, you know, you can only sell so many copies to them. So I launched a Kickstarter probably way before I should have, and just literally felt like I was walking around with a beggar's cup to anyone I knew. I'm like, hey, check out my Kickstarter, please.
Yeah.
So when I did the first one, it funded, but it was literally right at the last minute and barely funded. So I realized I needed to do something else, because all those family and friends who picked me up once, they're not going to do it time and time and time again.
Yeah.
So things like what I'm doing now, I just had to look and see, all right, who has a podcast, who has a YouTube that's willing to hear what I have to say. And I sent the first issue out to any reviewers that would be willing to look at it, and just kind of try to create a buzz about the book and let people know that it existed. Because more than anything, there's, I'm sure, countless amazing books out there that no one's ever heard of or will hear of, because you have to get out there and promote yourself. And it was something that took me way out of my comfort zone, but now I feel that it's moving along well, because now I launched 4 Kickstarters, and they're moving up, and you don't really look at the dollar values. Of course, you want to make the money, but are the backers growing? And each one has grown progressively more, where the first one we had about 87, and the last one closed at 180 backers.
Awesome.
So
that's amazing.
Making that progress is all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Especially from the first one to the next one, you know, 100% increase plus is awesome. I get it. It normally takes 5 to get there. You might be lucky if you get 40-50% more people like backing you, or even followers or likes or whatever, all this bullshit, right? What's it really accommodate to is like 1% that might actually go to the website and go buy the thing that you're trying to promote. But the idea that if I'm only getting that 1%, as long as more and more people are involved, that 1% grows.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's rad, dude. 80 to 180 is insane.
Yeah. And it took that's over 4 campaigns, so it wasn't one to the next.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
damn,
dude, that was crazy.
That would be ridiculous to get that much, but it went from 80. I think then the next one went to like 110,
right?
Then 110
okay,
to 160, and then 160 to 180. So it's still that growth, but you always have to think ahead. It's okay. Now I have 180. How do I take it to the next step? Now it's 200 that I want to get.
Right.
And you want to, more than anything, you want people to come back.
Right.
So that's the thing that I like to see, because that's all I've done over the last 2 days is just get my Kickstarter rewards ready and mail package after package. And it's so nice when you're seeing the same names. You're like, okay, this one was here for the first one, and they've come back every single time. So that's what you want to see, is not only do you get a reader who might think, oh, I saw this on a podcast, or I saw this on a website, I'm going to check it out, and then they check it out and that's it, they're done. You want them to come back and read it, because this is a planned 30 issue series, so I need people along for the full ride.
Absolutely.
Sure.
The people that come back are the ones that tell their friends, and that's how it grows exponentially. It's like we need those people to tell other people that are genuinely interested in it or genuinely like it, and that means more than just a like or a click or whatever. What you said you had 30 issues on deck? Like you're done 1 through 30 already?
The whole thing is outlined.
Okay.
Wow.
I've written up to 9, but the entire series is fully outlined.
So you have the story, you know where it's going to end up. It's just the process of building that and creating it. Okay.
I know exactly what the ending's going to be, not to say it can't change, because you never want to pigeonhole yourself completely.
Right.
But I know what the final act of the book is going to be. And this is just kind of building toward it. And then each arc will be 6 issues. So after each 6 issues, I'll be able to put out a trade to keep people caught up. Because that, even in the indie world, you get so many people that have that I'll wait for the trade mentality.
Right.
And I've done cons and things like that, and they're saying, oh, well, when's the trade coming out? And they're asking me this when I just put out issue 1. I'm thinking, I haven't made a penny on this thing. I don't want to even think about the trade. But, they're already thinking, I'll wait. I said, it could be 3 or 4 years. That's cool. I'll wait. So having that trade will be a nice thing to put on my table. Like, here's the trade. Go ahead and dive right in.
Yes, for sure.
I don't know if people are waiting for a deal or just waiting to have the whole thing in front of them. They don't want to wait issue to issue. But we hear that a lot. It's like, all right, well, we're going to put out, the 6 or the 5 or whatever it is. And, it's selling better this way than it was individually. And it's like, why? I don't get it. It's strange.
Yeah, I don't get that mentality, but I guess I grew up running down to the local, gas station or whatever and buying the new issues that came out. And I look at it too, as a collector, I don't have any trades in my collection that I could sell for $1,000 right now. But I have individual books that I've bought off the shelf that I could. And I, as a collector, I always want the real book in my hand. And, preferably I want a first print of it. And, if anything ever happens, then you have that real book, not just, the trade that I'm going to print listings and it'll never go out of print. Where now the first print of the issue is sold out. The second print of the issues of issue 1 is sold out. And if you didn't grab them when you could, those are long gone. So if there's ever money to be made, it's going to be by buying those individual issues. So that always lurks in my head. It's like, okay, this is the way that I collect. And even when I buy on Kickstarter, I don't buy a digital copy alone, because I want something in my hand. Because if it ever blows up, it's, owning a digital copy is not going to pay my bills for a month.
Right. I like to get, if I donate on Kickstarter and there's an option, I'll get the hard copy and like one of the little extras, just because I know that's going to be so limited to like what they did on Kickstarter. And they're going to do something completely different through probably a completely different company the next time. It won't be the same kind of thing. When you were a kid, did you collect other stuff? Like, did you collect baseball cards, or were you like strictly comic? Yeah.
I collected baseball cards. I collected action figures.
Yeah. Okay.
And I collected comic books. So I had the collection of all of those things. And, I still have most of them now. So it's kind of cool, because I found an old box in the garage that had, old like first appearance of Venom and first appearance of the
right.
Black Suit.
Damn,
They were just
dude.
sitting in a box in my garage for years. So it's nice when you can unearth those gems in there.
That's
and,
crazy.
You know, a lot of the stuff I collected was junky 90s comics that nobody wants to touch nowadays. But,
Yeah.
you know, I've always been the person that likes to hold something tangible. I think that's why when, you know, everybody was buying MP3s, I was buying vinyl records because I have to feel like I actually own it. And if it's a digital copy, I never feel any ownership of it.
Yeah, I hear that 100%. It's like, it's nice to have it if it's digital only, or if it's one of the benefits of donating to someone and you get a digital copy. Great.
Mhm.
I love looking through it, but there's something about holding something tangible and like physical in your hands that it's never going to be the same. And if you say that it is, you're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't beat opening it and just having that book in your hand, because I think everything looks better when you really can see it, smell it, experience
Right.
it.
The weight of the paper
scrolling on your screen.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
It's warmer. It's not as cold. The computer screen can be very cold, and you know, we're learning to deal with that in the modern day and age because we have to use it so often. But there's something to be said just about a hard copy of something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I want to skip back real quick when you said you've got pretty much the whole story outlined, and just kind of ask, not to ask for any, we don't want to give anything away, but is that having that storyline promotes so much Easter eggs, I'm sure, and your ability to foreshadow something in issue 4 that doesn't come to fruition until 19. Like, do you use a lot of that? And are you allowing yourself to utilize that because you have the full story out? Are you going back and kind of editing and changing as you writing later on to drop things in, or are you just allowing it to be what it is?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I like to throw little foreshadowing Easter eggs in there. So in issue 3, there's kind of one little throwaway panel where you see this woman and she's, "Oh, save me from this." And then you find out that she's, you know, the doctor's been experimenting with the drug, and it makes you hallucinate. And she, you know, then our main character sees the demon. And I try to throw as many little lines like that most people would miss the first time. And then they come back full circle. And if they were to read it in a trade form, when all those issues are there together, they'll catch those little lines. And then we're doing a sequence in issue 7, where they're going to be going through this area that's all loaded up with graffiti, and there's going to be so many little Easter eggs that I'm going to throw into that graffiti.
I wanted to talk about the graffiti
later through the issues.
I don't know if it was issue 1 or issue 3, but with like the Hope graffiti and stuff in the backgrounds. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So that was intentional. All that stuff was put there like on purpose.
Oh yeah, and we're going to see. We'll eventually see who put that Hope, who tagged that Hope onto that area.
Awesome.
That's cool. I love that kind of stuff where you think it's a throwaway panel or a throwaway line or whatever. Like, why is that there? And then you realize later on, like, oh, you either recall it or as you go back through, you notice it that next time. And that's the type of stuff I love. That's why I had to ask, because that is enticing to me. That makes me want to read more next issue and the next issue to see what it is that's going to come back around. You know what I mean? Those callbacks are awesome.
I try to do that. And then, then issue 3, there's a page in that book that completely and utterly connects to issue 9. And you're going to find out who the person was, because you see someone being arrested essentially, but that person is hugely significant to the story, but we won't find out till issue 9. Because I love to throw those little Easter eggs. Like, this page won't make any sense till you get to it, 6 issues later.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Dude, as someone that is a writer and kind of focusing on this medium or like this comic book format, do you still like enjoy watching comic book movies and reading comics and stuff? Are you still like into it, or are you kind of like in your own world with it now?
I still enjoy. I mean, I'll still go see all the Marvel movies when they come out, even the DC ones. I'll throw my money at the comic book movies because I can still enjoy them. There's points where you kind of become more critical. It's like, all right, they're becoming too formulaic, or there's too much of they're pushing whatever opinion they want pushed for the month when it comes to the monthlies. But I still have my pull list. I still get my new issues every week, and still will run out and see any comic book movie, because I think growing up, comic book movies were so rare. I mean, we had Superman, we had Batman, and then it was years before we got things like X-Men and the Marvel universe actually developing. And I still just get that giddy feeling when I know there's a new comic book movie coming out for a character that I love.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Are you I mean, I hate this fucking asses. Marvel or DC, do you care? Is it worth caring about?
I don't think it's worth caring about. I'm team Vertigo, but Vertigo folded. So
dude, all right.
That's been
where all my favorite stories came from, was that, Why the Last Man, and all the stories that came out of Vertigo were so amazing, and then they just dumped the whole line. So I'm like, I don't care about either one, but I've always been a Batman guy, so I guess it would put me on team DC if it came down to it, because I'm just a Batman fanatic when it comes down to it.
That's a hot button question for most of the comics, man.
Yeah.
That's funny.
They want, or most of the comics.
I mean, yeah, you know what I mean. Like,
the creators, they're staunchly for or against one or the other. Absolutely. It's funny.
I can read and enjoy both. It's, I wish DC had a better cinematic universe, but I love the Batmans that came out with Christopher Nolan. So it's like, all right, when they just wanted a universe and they wanted it overnight. And that's the problem, is Marvel took their time developing it, and DC's like, shoot, we got 2 movies. Let's make a cinematic universe.
Yeah. Speaking of, so you like Batman. I just want to get your pull on this then. You've seen every Batman since the first ones with Michael Keaton in the 80s, up until, let's say, Joker. Which ones do you gravitate towards?
What era is your favorite?
Do you still like those old kind of like campier ones? Is there some that you could just do without? I mean, I have some opinions on, but I'd like to hear yours.
I think for me, the 89 Batman with Michael Keaton, I'm so connected to that, because that wasn't just a movie. It was an entire movement when that came out. I mean, everybody was rocking their Batman shirts, and it was like, for a moment, the comic nerd felt kind of cool, until like a year later, I was wearing a Batman shirt and someone goes, that's not cool anymore, right? Shit, I missed out.
Missed the memo.
Yeah, but I mean, I love that one, and that particular movie. I mean, it hasn't aged great, but I still love watching it. It's, put the nostalgia glasses on, and it's brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, those were my first introductions to Batman. And I just remember, being into it from the first time I saw those movies. Batman 1, 2, 3, like all of them, even into the Val Kilmer stage of it. Batman Forever was like a big one for me. But then I remember turning my back at Batman Robin. I was like, I'm a little too old to like this one. Like, I don't know. It didn't seem as like good to me. Whatever.
That one, I was in college when that one hit, so it was just terrible. The first 2 I liked, and then I think I was in high school when the Jim Carrey one came out, and it's like, okay,
right,
something's not quite right with this one. I don't outright hate it, because it's still Batman, and it's still entertaining, but then it was, what came after that, just, oh man,
it was like dipping its toe in how campy can we get again. And then like I felt like the next one was just like overkill with like how cheesy it was trying to be with Schwarzenegger and like, let's freeze.
All the bad puns.
But the Christopher Nolan ones ruled. I loved Joaquin Phoenix as Joker. I just watched that. I didn't watch it when it came out. I just watched it maybe a year ago, and I was like, damn, this is really good. It's a completely like standalone kind of movie.
Yeah,
it's rad.
Yeah, I really like that, and I was the same way. I didn't see it in the theater. I think whatever their promotional campaign was just didn't work for me. And I'm usually a pretty easy sell when it comes to comic movies and stuff. But every time I saw the trailer, I'm like, that just doesn't look. So it finally came out on Blu-ray, and I think I went in Redbox. It's like, damn, I missed out. This thing was amazing.
It was killer. It just like a real gritty, like New York kind of movie. I heard it be compared to like Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy with Robert De Niro, which it definitely has direct like throwbacks to that. And I was like a fan of that movie. And so when I finally watched it, I was like, damn, this is good. I was like, all right, I give it up. Joaquin Phoenix, you rule. Yeah. But yeah, I was just curious because everyone has their opinions on these things. And, some people are purists and some people like what they like. And I'm just throwing my opinion out there.
It's a hard debate. And I know I was on a podcast not that long ago, and it was, a panel of indie comic creators. And the question was, do you even read mainstream comics? And, everybody, it reminds me of when I was growing up, because I was really into the indie music scene. And it's like, oh, if you get played on K-Rock, you're dead to me. And it was just like, no, I can't live in that mentality, because if you still make good songs that get played on the radio, what do I care? I don't want you to squalor and have to live in a van for the rest of your career to go get paid somewhere. So that whole mentality kind of moved its way into indie comics as well. And I just think if it's a good story, I don't care who's putting it out, even if it's, it's Marvel or DC. I just like to read a good story, and I still love those characters. So I'm rooting to read good stories about the character up with.
For sure.
Shameless self-plug. We've got a handful of really good artists at ratneststickerco.com that are making really good comics these days, that they have interesting stories, completely different styles all across the board, and the stories are fun to read and they're intriguing. There is a lot of episodic stuff that's been coming out. Go check it out. If you like random stories and exposing yourself to other artists, like ideas and other styles of comics, there's a lot of them on there.
Definitely check that out.
That was great to you and everybody listening as well.
Oh, no, I like that idea. I love reading. I just filled my first full long box of nothing but indie comics the guy bought from Kickstarter. So I love reading new stories with a writer who can tell their story with no compromise, and they can be as crazy as they want because they're the ones that own it. So I love reading those kind of stories, and not everyone is going to be amazing, but knowing what it takes to get a comic book released into the world, I would never rip on another indie creator, just because it's so much effort and time and blood, sweat, and tears. So if they put that in to get their book into the world, then more power to them, and best of luck.
Dude, that's exactly what we're about, and we love here. And it's like we try to promote and work with people that are working for themselves to do their thing and get it out there, and not worry about who's going to pick it up or trying to develop it or anything in that sense. It's just like putting the work out there for people to check out. And it's like that. There's something to be said about that. It's like the bravery and you're not getting anything out of it. It's all self-sacrifice to do it that way. So, that's who we try to promote and try to, put on a pedestal and feature on the site, is people that are just doing it for themselves to get their work out.
Yeah. People that want to tell their story. And that's when it came down to me, as I said, I can just move on and let this story go, but I would never feel okay letting the story die in my head.
Sure.
So I'm going to get it out into the world. And if, 10 people enjoy it, then great. Of course you want more, but it's all about telling your story. And I think anyone in the indie comic world, that's what it's about. They want to tell their story to the world. And, they're going to put a lot of time and effort to do that, because I'm sure some of them just imagine they're going to become instant millionaires, but most know better.
Yeah.
They know, if nothing else, I can have some people enjoy something that I put out there, and there's no better feeling than that.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, man. Well, the work you're putting out there is amazing.
Thank you.
Really good.
Last thing I want to touch on for people that are wondering what we're talking about. It's called Immortal Era. It's this comic book you've written. You work with a team to develop it and produce it. But one of the first pages in the first issue talks about kind of the setup to it. So if I could just say that, it's like the news report is that strangely, not a lot of people have been dying. So where the whole thing started off? Was that your first idea on this whole book? Is let's start from this jump off point?
My first idea came, and it was, being an English lit major in college, we were reading Gulliver's Travel. We were reading just an excerpt from the book, and he goes to an island where everybody's immortal and realizes that it is not the way you want to live. It's like, it sounds great at first. Like, okay, they're all immortal, and he's only seeing the young, 20-something immortals. And of course, they're happy. But then he kind of stumbles across the people that are hundreds of years old. They can't think for themselves. They can barely move. And he realizes right away, immortality is completely overrated. And it's just a small little story. I mean, it's only a handful of pages. And that's what kind of got the whole idea into my head, is like, okay, I love this idea that immortality sucks, but I want to take it somewhere else.
For sure. I have a question that I'm kind of curious about. Who is your favorite character? Like, are you right along with the main character, or you got a bunch of side stories and side characters? Like, who would you call out as your favorite?
I think, because I mean, I have to think about who I love to write for, and I love writing Miguel.
Okay.
He's just fun. I like his sense of humor. He's always trying to lighten the situation. So I love writing for him. I mean, I'm always connected with the main character because the story kind of moves through her point of view. When it was a novel, it was a first person point of view from her eyes. And I think that's the one thing, writing it as a comic, it's actually developed the side characters a lot more, because you want each and every one of them to be interesting. Where if you're telling a first person story, the one that matters more than anyone is that first person narrator. But now it's
an ensemble cast.
I love developing the other characters, and it's really fun writing villains too. It's like, I loved writing Dr. Nix because she's just so vile, and I had the best time writing her stuff. So I think Miguel and her are my favorites to write for.
The nicest and the meanest.
I try to enjoy writing all of them, but yeah, those two I always have a good time.
Oh yeah,
that's cool.
That's really rad.
Yeah, no, I like it, and you can kind of see that too. That lends to having really cohesive and intertwined character development. They're rolling together, and you can tell you're enjoying writing it. That's why I wanted to know, like, which one is your favorite, because you can tell you're having a blast when you're writing this.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome,
dude. Well, Ed, we're about to wrap this up, man. Is there can we tell the people where to check out Immortal Era and what Kickstarters or GoFundMes you have going on right now?
Right now, I have no crowdfunding going on because I'm fulfilling all my pledges for the current one that just ended for issue 5. So I actually just put the tag on the last envelope today. So all the physical rewards are fulfilled. So the new Kickstarter will be launching probably in February. That's my goal, because I want to let people get through the holidays and just give myself a moment to breathe as well. So if you wanted to find anything about what's going on with that, you need to follow Finish Line Comics on all the social media. And right now, we're the only one that you would find under that. So if you go to Instagram, you go to Facebook, you go to Twitter, follow Finish Line Comics. And there's also a website, finishlinecomics.com. I have a web store where you can buy the back issues. Issue 5 isn't up on the web store yet because I always fulfill all of the Kickstarters first. That way, the people who backed it, they're the first ones to hold it in hand.
Right on.
And I also have a bunch of cons coming up for the first time, because it's with COVID, all the cons got shut down, and especially in California.
Yeah.
But they're all coming back in basically like a 3-week stretch. So I'll be at the San Diego Comic-Con special edition this upcoming weekend on Thanksgiving.
Nice.
And I'll be at the LA Comic-Con a week after the San Diego one, and then in a couple weeks after that in Ontario, California, I'll be at the con out there. So I'll have lots of cons. And if anyone listening to this podcast comes to the con, come over to the table, mention this podcast, I'll throw some free stickers your way.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. There you go. Ratnest love.
Yeah. You're only going to get about 14 people that listen to this, and 1.4 might come up to you. But, that's what we're going for. That's what we're building for.
I got a lot of stickers if we get a giant rush, so I'm ready.
Right on, he's ready for the rush.
Hell yeah, man. Well, congratulations on getting to this far, doing your thing and keeping it going and building a team. And like I said, it looks amazing. I'm going to plug it as much as I can on our stuff just because of the quality of it. It's beautiful. You're an awesome dude. thanks for sitting down and talking with us.
Thank
Couldn't
you.
have enjoyed
Thank
it
you for
more.
having me. This has been a fun one.
Yeah,
it's been really enjoyable, man.
No, it's been good, man. So, anything else before we go? You wanna throw out there? Do you have a personal website?
My only website is thefinishlinecomics.com. I'm not very good at that kind of stuff, so I do my best. But yeah, check out the website, check out the web store if you're interested in getting a copy of the book. I have physical and digital copies available because I know some people, even though I don't give good credit for the digital copies, some people have an entire comic collection that fits in the palm of their hand.
Absolutely.
There's something to be said about that with all my long boxes in the garage.
I hear it, man. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us, brother. This has been Ed Davis. Jim, you want to say anything, brother?
Honestly, it's been a pleasure talking with you. It's really great to meet you. Keep doing what you're doing. It's really, really good. And anybody listening, check out Immortal Era. You will not be disappointed. Thanks so much for being here, Ed. We really appreciate you, bro.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. If you want to hold on one second, I'm going to do this outro. This has been another episode of the Ratnest podcast. You can catch us every week on Friday, YouTube for the video, and all streaming platforms for the audio. Go to Ratnest Sticker Co. for comics, posters, zines, t-shirts, and more. And Jim?
I'm Jim.
And that's it. See you next week.